Leave you there and move to our other guests. And joining us also from our Parliament House studio is the former opposition whip Michael Johnson. Now, thanks for being there.
Good evening, Tony.
You were preparing, as I understand it, to vote for Joe Hockey. Earlier today you indicated as much. You've changed your mind now. Tell us why.
No, I have enormous respect and affection for both Joe and for Tony. I never said that I would vote for Joe.
Well, I'll just remind you of what you did say earlier today. The party and the country need Joe Hockey. This is the time when giants step up. And by stepping up, Joe will be doing a service to the country and the party. Certainly sounds like you supported him earlier today.
Well, absolutely, I do support him. I think that he should be a candidate because there was speculation that he might not even run. And I don't think that would be a good scenario because we'd be facing a situation where Malcolm Turnbull would perhaps be re-elected and he was going to be the compromise candidate for the party. But I signed the spill motion letter and it would be untenable for me, it would be completely hypocritical for me to not support the candidate that best reflects, in my view, my electorate's position and my own assessment.
So your position now is that because Joe Hockey has switched to supporting the emissions trading scheme, that you're switching your support to Tony Abbott away from him. Is that right?
That's correct. I think that the Liberal Party needs to have a formal position. We need to be very serious about this. Climate change is an important issue. We need to address it. And this idea that those who don't agree with the ETS are climate change sceptics or deniers is just a nonsense. I, for example, very strongly believe that we need to do something about this. We need to come at this from a risk management perspective. We need to give the planet the benefit of the doubt, but that does not mean higher taxes. It doesn't mean striking and hitting hard the struggling families of Sydney and Brisbane and my own electorate of Ryan with taxes that quite clearly many of them will find unable to meet.
OK, let's look ahead to this party vote tomorrow, assuming that spill motion is carried. You're going to have a choice. I mean, you've made your choice to vote for Tony Abbott, but the other choice is between two candidates, both of whom support an emissions trading scheme. So who do you vote for? Who do you advise your colleagues vote for under those circumstances if they want an ETS?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that line of thinking. What I would say to my colleagues very strongly and very clearly is that the Liberal Party needs to have a position. And can I say to Mr Turnbull and to his supporters, I have enormous respect for him. He is a substantial individual. He's achieved an incredible amount in his life and he's passionate about a signature issue which he shares with Kevin Rudd. I think that's fantastic that he's got a position. Equally, Tony Abbott's got a very strong position which happens to coincide with my own view and in my assessment, my electorate. I don't think that having a candidate that is supposed to be harmonious and that is supposed to bring people together, allowing the party to have a free vote is just acceptable. I think it's just unacceptable. And I would say to my colleagues, the Liberal Party has got to have a formal position because it sends a very bad message. It sends an awful precedent that on matters of policy, people can just decide to vote as they please. This is not a social policy. This is not a matter of conscience. This is a matter of economic policy, of tax policy. And so people have got to vote along the party line or they've got to cross the floor. OK,
if I understand you correctly, what you're effectively saying is that because Joe Hockey supports this free vote idea, he's not worth supporting as a candidate.
That's correct, Tony. I would say very strongly to my colleagues that the Liberal Party's got to have a position. We can't go into an election where there is a free vote for individuals. We've got to have a strong position on the ETS, whether we support it or whether we don't. And in my view, Tony Abbott best reflects the views not only of my electorate, but I think of the country. And this is just going to be terrible policy. You know, can I make this observation, Tony? It doesn't even come into force if it was to be passed until the 1st of July 2011. So why are we being bullied by the government to pass it this side of Christmas? There is just no reasonable, logical, acceptable reason for us to be bullied by the government to pass it right now before there's a global agreement in Copenhagen or any time thereafter.
Who do you expect is going to win under the circumstances that you've just outlined?
I think we need a strong leader, and I think that strong leader is Tony Abbott. I would encourage my colleagues to support him because he's come out very clearly, very strongly, very definitively that the country's interests are not served by a tax that will strike working families, the so-called families that Kevin Rudd represents. If a family is struggling now, and many in my electorate tell me that they are, then how on earth will they cope with extra taxes on their electricity bills, extra taxes in businesses? I mean, we are supposed to be the party of small business, of medium-sized businesses, of the forgotten people. And as far as I understand the Menzies philosophy, we don't slug the forgotten people with extra taxes and make their life more difficult than it already is.
All right. This free vote idea was obviously cooked up in Joe Hockey's office today. Among those who were in the negotiations to allow this to happen in order to get Joe Hockey to agree to actually stand as a candidate was Senator Nick Minchin. Does that make you at all suspicious that what this has all been about, in fact, was getting rid of Malcolm Turnbull?
No, look, I don't know the dynamics of those meetings. They were private. But what I understand is that those of us who signed that letter last Friday, a very serious act. I mean, I've been in the party for some 15 years now, and I consider my decision to sign that letter a very, very serious one. I didn't take it lightly. I took it because I believed in something. I believe that it's not in my electorate's interest, in the families of the Ryan electorate, in the families across the country, for there to be a tax on families that are struggling. And I don't think that the other two candidates represent my family, my family's in the Ryan electorate. So I would say very strongly to my colleagues, we've got to have a formal position. We've got to have a position that the party can say, this is our position. If you don't happen to support it, then it's up to you to make your decision to cross the floor.
Now, as I understand it, under the redistribution, your seat of Ryan has come down to a margin of 1.1%. It was a safe Liberal seat. 1.1%. Aren't you afraid you could be wiped out in the next election because you appear to be against action on climate change?
Well, that's a very good point, Tony. I retained my seat at the last election, the 2007 tsunami, with a primary vote, and I was very, very confident and very, hard-working in holding that seat. And so, for me to take the position that I am now, I think reflects something. I think it reflects a mood in the electorate that being bullied by the government is not the right thing to do. And in politics, you've got to make the tough calls. Leadership is a lonely place to be. You've got to make the tough calls. You've got to stand for something. And I would say to my constituents that their local member stands for something, and
by the way, isn't that what Malcolm Turnbull did? Take the tough decisions in this lonely place and stand for something? You don't give him any credit for that?
Let's go back to the values. Yeah, but let's go back to the values of our party. They are entrepreneurship, they are innovation, they are small business, they are the hard-working families of the country. And I don't see that an emissions trading scheme being rushed, being bullied through, is a good place to be. And I would just say to all my colleagues, the Liberal Party has got to have a formal position. Joe Hockey's a fantastic bloke. He's a great guy. He commands the affection of all of us. But I think that leadership is some place that requires you to stand up and have a spine. And in my assessment, in the Ryan electorate, I think that I've got the measure of the pulse correct, and I will respect the decision of my constituents. But this is a tax that will destroy our country.
Michael Johnson, we're almost out of time, but it just indicated from what you're suggesting there, it appears to me what you're suggesting there is that Joe Hockey doesn't have a spine.
Look, in politics, you've got to stand for something. And as I say, Joe's a great guy and he's a fantastic bloke. But you've got to make the hard calls. And for me, making the hard calls and the right calls, we've got to support policies that reflect the values of our party. And they are small business. They are the hard-working families. Okay. They are the voiceless. Right. They are those that we need to empower.
Okay. All right, Michael Johnson, we thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. One of two opposing sides in the Liberal Party. Thank you very much. Probably more than two, in fact.
Thank you, Tony.
In the end.